Thank you everyone for attending tonight's Boston Office 365 user group session. Just have a few intro slides and some updates from Microsoft that have been recently announced before we dive into our main presentation. My name is Dimitri. I'm one of the founders of the group, and we're actually approaching 7 years this May, so it's been a fun ride so far. Along with me, I have Mike Dixon, who is also one of the original co-founders, and we also have Bill Gunning that's joined us last year to really help out and help keep this group alive and moving forward. So if you have any questions, you can ask them to any of us. If you have any complaints, you can send them to Bill because he is not here tonight. So if you had a chance to attend our last session, it was a great session by our very own Mike Dixon talking about how to quickly and efficiently style Power Apps. The video has been uploaded to YouTube, so please check that out if you're interested in the topic. And just as a reminder, these sessions are being recorded, so anything that you say off of mute will make it into the recording. If you object, just stay on mute and you'll be good. So we have some updates that we want to share. We feature this section every month to cover what's been released in the prior 4 weeks, or at least what's been announced. So with this, I'm going to pass it over to Mike to walk us through it.
All right, thank you, Dimitri. So our first update is the Office Organization Explorer. Apparently, Microsoft felt that we didn't have enough organization charts within the M365 community, so they're giving us another one. This one is going to be accessible through Outlook and will show up as an icon on the left-hand side navigation bar when looking at Outlook on the web. And then we have SharePoint updates. So 2 quick updates with SharePoint. Microsoft is implementing a transcript generator. So this is a step in the movement towards integrating all of the stream media functionality into SharePoint lists. If you have a video file in a library in SharePoint, you will be able to click on a button that says generate transcript. I'm sorry, this option is available for owners of the site or library only. Also, lists now have a board view. So this applies to Microsoft lists and also, of course, SharePoint lists. Now have the ability to generate a board view, so you can do Kanban-like views, and whatever column you designate as your sorter will be automatically updated as items are dragged and dropped between these different columns. Next slide. Updates for Microsoft Teams. They are coming out with the ability to hide your own video. I know that this is a highly requested feature. So coming soon, you'll be able to right-click on your video feed and select hide. When you do this, it will still be, your video feed is really just hidden from your view. It is still visible to all of the other participants in the call. The walkie-talkie app is coming for iOS. The ability to pin a chat message is coming very soon. And another highly requested one is the ability to mute notifications while you're in a meeting. Is huge. Yes, I agree. One of those things I can't believe it didn't come like that, but yes, very excited. The Office page is getting a bit of a makeover. There's going to be a new home page, the ability to create a page, and also your own content. This is also kind of piggybacking off of some of the Viva connections. It'll do things like suggest things that maybe should be tasks, and then give you a one-click connection to add items to your Microsoft To Do, which is very cool. And yeah, looking forward to that. That's really all I have to say about that. Next slide. Oh, and this is the screenshot for the Microsoft board view. I just wanted to include this. This has been a long time talked about, but is finally starting to roll out and make it out there now. So this one, on the other hand, was also announced a while ago and says should be complete by early February, but I can tell you I'm in a targeted release environment and I do not have this feature yet, but really looking forward to this. This is the ability to very quickly and easily switch to different document libraries within a team site or SharePoint site. So when you're in any document library, you'll get that, in this instance, it's that little green book button right in the middle of that screenshot. And when you click on that, you get a drop-down list that lists out all of the other libraries in that same site. And that's it. Is there anything else that anybody else detected or ran into in the past month or so that they found noteworthy? And just a quick reminder, there are literally somewhere on the order of 200 updates that are pushed out by Microsoft to Office 365 every month. So this is by no means everything on the list. These are just some of the big ones that we thought you would find most interesting, and would likely have the biggest impact.
Hey, Mike, in I don't know if it came up in the last month's meeting, but the ability to add images inline in the text editor web part is fairly new. I don't know if a lot of people have seen it yet.
I did hear about that. Yeah, I think we did talk about that last month. Yeah, there's a lot of new options for formatting text that have come with that. But yeah, the inline images is definitely the big one. All right, take it away, Dimitri.
All right, next Mike. We'd like to thank Turn Digital as being our platinum sponsor. They're helping pay all of our fees to maintain our different platforms, including our regulatory filings to maintain our nonprofit status with both the state of Massachusetts and the IRS. Moving forward, so we have our feature presentation coming up, the main event. We have how to evaluate Microsoft Viva Topics and explore its impact on your knowledge, content, and collaboration strategy with Mike Dumka. So, Mike, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much for having me. In case I do sound a little bit different, that's because I am from the Great White North. I'm from Canada. So again, yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm gonna share my screen here. Just want to make sure that we're all good. Okay. And you guys can see everything I got going on here. Everybody can see my screen, the deck I'm sharing. Beautiful. All right, awesome. Okay, so I'll get going here. Okay, so yeah, so today we're talking about how you can run a proof of concept using Viva Topics. So as I get my thing going, obviously I'm Mike Dumka, right? The guy who's talking. I'm a digital workplace consultant. I work for a place called Habanero Consulting. I've been here for about 4 years, but before that, I spent about 15 years at Canada Life as an intranet person, a collaboration person, somebody who, lived, breathed, and sweated and died through SharePoint and all its different iterations. So that's how I kind of made a move into the consulting space. Obviously, I said I worked for Habanero Consulting. We are a Canadian company, but we've done work all over North America and a little bit in Europe. We have offices in Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, and Toronto. As I was talking before, I'm from Winnipeg, where it seems like it's minus 8,000 today, and we're under an extreme cold and blizzard warning. I sometimes ask my wife every day why we stay here and don't move to some place like Bermuda, considering I can work remotely. but I am a huge hockey nut, so maybe that's why I'm staying, because I gotta be close to the Jets. For those that are hockey fans, we are also a Microsoft partner on a bunch of different levels. We also are partners with AvePoint and ServiceNow, although I mainly focus in the Microsoft space. But what we do is we focus on culture, employee experience, and digital workplace technologies. So basically everything that help people have successful workplaces. And where we kind of see ourselves is right in the sweet spot between culture and technology and making all this stuff work together. And I think that's a big reason why we're leading into understanding all the different pillars around Microsoft Viva. And I'm here to talk to you guys about topics today. One of the big things is we're proud that we've been a great place to work in Canada for the last number of years. For the company the size we are, we're about 60 employees. We actually won it first for 3 years in a row and been in the top 10 for the last 10 years. But that's enough about all that stuff. I'm here to talk about topics, so that was a little preamble. My goal for today is to kind of help give you guys some ideas on how you can run your own Viva Topics proof of concept or pilot within your own organizations or with the clients that you help support. So some of you may or may not have heard that Microsoft has this thing called Viva that they're coming out. I don't know how I feel about the name still to this day, but there are 4 main pillars. The one that I'm going to focus on is Viva Topics, which helps organizations manage their knowledge, right? So the bumper sticker that comes from Microsoft, right? Viva Topics uses Microsoft AI technology, Microsoft 365, the graph, search, and other components and services to bring knowledge to your users. In Microsoft 365, starting with SharePoint, Modern Pages, and SharePoint Search. So for those of you that haven't seen what it looks like, this is the content that Microsoft circulates, right, that we use with our clients here at Habanero. And as you see here, this is an instance of what Teams looks like. If I move forward, you're going to see here that what we have come up is something called a topics card. And this is supposed to be able to kind of surface knowledge in the context of work or in the context of tools that you're using, right? As we can see here, we're in Teams, but at some point in the future, we're also supposed to get this kind of integration, not only into things like Outlook, right, both for the web and for the desktop, but other Microsoft applications, PowerPoint, Word, Excel, Dynamics, all of the different tools that you use within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. Within the topic card, you have the actual, the title of what it is that you're looking for. You have alternative names if we're ever thinking about acronyms, things like that. Descriptions about what the topic might be, people who work on this, and suggested resources. Again, this is just a topic card. You can drill into it deeper by going into the actual Microsoft Topic Center. But as we kind of move forward, right, you can see once you click the view details, you're actually brought into the topic center page within Microsoft Teams. So here, this is where we see all of the information about the topic within Microsoft 365. We have the title, we have alternate names, again, to kind of support acronyms and other vernaculars. You've got a description that you can manually enter, or it can be automatically pulled from the top ranked document. You can see the people that work on this topic the most. These people have been pinned. So by a knowledge manager, they know that these are the most important people when talking about this topic. Below here, you can see that we have, it went by it because of the animation, but I'll go back up to here. You can see the suggested people at the bottom. And as you kind of see underneath at the bottom of the screen, it actually talks about what they've contributed to and what kind of knowledge they bring to this actual topic. And then as I scroll down, what happens here is we start to see suggested files and pages. We can also pin files, right, if we know that they're the most important pieces as a part of knowledge, right? And then as you can see here, this example here is not only searching within Microsoft 365, it's showing examples around PowerPoint, Word, Stream, Power BI, but it's also got some information that's stored within ServiceNow, because this will be it in the point in future, right? As most things with Viva, it's still evolving, be able to kind of plug into other services that are held within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. Sorry, my dog just came in here, right? The little demon that he is. So then as we kind of move forward, right? You can also see that how topics is integrated into Yammer. Now, this is where we start to get the functionality of connecting people with the information through topics. So you can see people who are asking questions and answers, and also being able to kind of surface the most important conversations that are happening in with Yammer, so that way we can start to surface this knowledge and democratize it, so that way we don't have everything throwing through one person, but other people within organizations who might have this subject matter expertise that can really help bring this knowledge to the future, because the more all of us know, the more all of us are better off. And then if you go into ask a question, this is where it shows some of the information. Whereas if you were into Yammer and ask a question, Viva Topics can actually already surface information based on what's contained within the topics application, right? And then you'll see somebody here actually answers at the bottom. This is functionality that will be available like when the integration happens, and it can happen right within the topic page itself. And then finally here at the bottom, we can see that there's also a way that when you start creating topics within Viva Topics, you can start to stitch together topics that are related and kind of really create that spider web of knowledge, so people can start to drill and explore deeper into different facets of knowledge to kind of understand more about what's going on. And then here at the bottom, it shows some other related information like Yammer communities that might contain some of this information, as well as related sites that that might be applicable to this piece of topic, this piece of knowledge, I should say. And then at the bottom, we've got suggested for you. These are all kinds of informations that are happening right within topics that may be related to Project SOAR. So essentially what topics is, right, as I talked about, right, is it can harness collective knowledge and empower people to learn, upskill, and innovate faster through the crowdsourcing of content. The big theme that you're going to get from me from this is that, like, a lot of knowledge management or old school, like, kind of publishing of knowledge within organizations was done through a centralized person or a couple of people. We really want to democratize or decentralize the understanding of knowledge, so that way people can really start to get use of this. And the more people we have contributing to the knowledge, right, the more accurate it's going to be. So when I start talking to people and explaining what I think about when it comes to Viva Topics, is I really think about it like fishing. So I know it's a simple analogy, and I know being from central Canada, right, this might be a little bit of a bad analogy for a whole bunch of people from Boston who are right on the coast and near a lot of fishing communities, right? I hope I got that right, at least based on my geography, right? I look at topics the same way as being like a commercial fisherman, right? Topics is based on Microsoft AI, right? And it searches everything that you're supposed to have within your Microsoft ecosystem, and hopefully at some point in the future being able to connect to third-party products and services. They can look in the best locations, right? Like a fisherman, it knows where to fish. They drop their net, they drag it, they catch as many fish as they can. But when the net comes up, right, we still need fishermen to figure out what are the best fish to keep and what are the best fish that need to go back in the water, the ones we don't need. It's the same thing with topics. You still need a human that can kind of curate this information and help make it really, really useful for everybody else who has to access it. That's the big key here. And one of the big things that I want you guys to take away is that while we're talking about AI to surface all of this content and bring it up to us, you still need someone that curates it and makes sense of it for everybody else. So how do you work towards a proof of concept? Because this is one of the biggest questions that we've kind of started to uncover with our clients, is like, how can we actually get this into our organization? And there's three big things that we've started in terms of themes that we've seen that come up over and over and over again. We want to make sure that we're planning for the implementation, we're configuring, and then we implement and measure to make sure we actually see how things are working and whether we actually hit our goals. So in terms of talking about the first phase for planning, let's get into it. So when some key considerations that organizations need to think about when they're running a proof of concept, they should include, what do you want to learn? So what do you want to learn by running this proof of concept with Viva Topics? Understanding what are the biggest knowledge management problems that you currently have. What content do you want to target when you're scanning? Because you just don't want to turn it on and scan everything, because There could be duplication of content. You may be in an organization that has like millions and millions of documents, right? So like you really want to kind of target it because this is a proof of concept, not a full-scale implementation. Understanding where the content lives today. So if you have a knowledge management system that you're replacing or looking to test, right, the big thing is, especially right now, is it has to live in Microsoft 365 and SharePoint Online. Who should be involved? Making sure you've got the right stakeholders, decision makers, subject matter experts, right? Should you be using a trial of Viva Topics because Microsoft does give it away, or should you get some licensing because that may be a key component into how you run this? How long should you run the proof of concept for? What do you plan to do once you're done with the proof of concept? Like, are we going to take this further? Are we going to keep using it? Or are we going to go back to our old knowledge management strategy? And then how do you want to measure success? So the big thing that we talk about first is creating measures of success. So there's two types that you can create. There's, of course, the quantitative, right, where we're looking at actual analytics and metrics, right, the ones and zeros, right? And then there's qualitative, where we're getting feedback from the people who are actually using the content and using the knowledge. Quantitative measures, right? The big things that come through when Viva Topics is actually published is topic impressions. So how many people have actually used and viewed the topics? The quantity of topics, you're going to have a whole bunch of topics that's surfaced by Microsoft. You're going to have confirmed and unconfirmed. This is the fish we want to keep and the fish that are throwing back. And then the number of topics. How many useful topics is Viva actually surfacing? So the thing is, how many fish are we actually keeping after we drag our net on the bottom of the ocean? Then there's the qualitative, right? So every time that a topic card is accessed, right, we can get end user feedback. So understanding if this piece of knowledge was useful, right? And then also we will kind of like, this is where we send out surveys and make sure that we get actual information from end users, right? Like what is the search and find experience like? What are employees feeling when they're authoring and publishing content? And most importantly, what are people thinking about using Viva Topics? Is this something that they want to get use of moving forward? So then when we're talking about the key decisions for the proof of concept, right? The things that we want to think about is who owns the business problem that we're trying to solve? What is the publishing model that we're going to use? And I'll explain that more in a second. And then what are everybody's roles and responsibilities? So as we dig into this, it's like who owns the business problem? So who owns knowledge within an organization that we're trying to improve? So there are a couple of ways that this typically goes. Like we've worked with organizations where a lot of this kind of falls within the technology function. Think of a group that's called IT or information services or any other number of things, right? This is a group that's typically looking to increase the adoption of Microsoft 365 and supporting 365. But they're also focused on understanding new technologies and how topics can support their business partners, right? Very much, as we say, the old school way of thinking where technology owns it. But now what we're starting to see is our second group, which is the business function. These are the areas within the organizations that are looking to solve a specific knowledge management problem. Some common scenarios that we're seeing being investigated by using Microsoft Topics is onboarding, like where the information I need is when joining a group or organization, expertise in information sharing, like so where's the information I need to get my job done and who are the people that know the most about it. I talked a lot about it, organizational vocabularies and acronyms. We all know that each company speaks its own language. Being able to find and understand that information is very key. Policies and procedures, so very core information for most organizations. How do you actually do your job and get it done the right way? And then project information. A lot of people are brought into projects halfway through, have to find information or go exploring to understand what the actual information is that has to do with the project, right? These are just a few examples of some of the common business scenarios we're seeing and talking with clients about how they could run a proof of concept with Viva Topics. I think that if I say the word Viva Topics anymore, my mouth might fall off, but I've got a lot of it in here, so I'll just keep plugging away. Okay, so we also find that, and this probably doesn't come as a surprise to most of you, that we're most successful when we get a situation where we have the technology group and the business partner partner together on this, right? And actually working in cohesion, right? The business can be laser focused on evaluating if Viva Topics can help with their knowledge management problem. And then the technology group can evaluate if Viva Topics is suitable for within their environment, if it's configured the right way to be successful. Also, as part of planning, right, we need to land on a publishing model. And this is what I talked a little bit about during the introduction. There are two options, crowdsourced and authoritative. The crowdsourced model is where everyone in the organization can add and edit topics. Think something like Wikipedia, right? This is absolutely a faster model and could be a little more chaotic, and it's definitely harder to manage and perhaps a little less accurate if you have everybody going in. You don't know if everybody actually knows everything they're talking about. And then we have the authoritative model. This is where we have a set of people that is responsible for adding, publishing, and editing topics. It's definitely a slower model. It requires more resources, but is less chaotic and absolutely more accurate. The big question your organization or any company will have to answer, right, is can you live in a faster crowdsourced model, or do you need to invest in resources to support an authoritative model? Based on the fact that we're talking about this like a proof of concept, right, is I think it's a crowdsourced model is something that every organization should test as they kind of move forward, right? It's, technology can, this is where the technology can unlock the most organizational knowledge, and the organization can get the biggest return on investment because everybody's actually using the tool. Knowledge managers can still have oversight, so that's a big thing. So they can still understand what everybody's publishing, can see what's going on, right? But we can, and we'll talk roles in a second, but getting everybody involved gives you better insights into how Viva Topics is working. And this is a proof of concept or a pilot, right? So we really want to learn about what this can do. It's not a full-scale implementation. So then next, we want to talk about the knowledge. And the different roles that we actually need to have in place to support this, right? So the four that we've landed on is knowledge admins, knowledge managers, topic contributors, and topic viewers. So as I explain this, right, the first one is the knowledge admin. Knowledge admins are the people who can actually set up Viva Topics in 365. They manage the Viva Topics settings after everything has been completed. A real-world example of like who this might be is your Microsoft 365 Global Admin or SharePoint Admin, since setup and management are done in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Their responsibilities are to configure which SharePoint sites are going to be crawled, configure the licenses for knowledge managers, configure and license the topic contributors, same with topic viewers, and then configure any excluded topics that they don't want to be surfaced. Also part of setup, they're going to set up the topic center, which I'll show you in a second. Then we have the knowledge manager. Knowledge managers are users who manage topics in your organizations. For topic management, they do everything through the topics page in the topic center, and it's only visible to knowledge managers. People who have a good overall understanding of the business or knowledge problem are good candidates to be in the knowledge manager role. They have the understanding and the expertise to know if topics are valid or not, and might know who the people are related to the subject that might be considered subject matter experts. This is very much the fisherman role. What's a good fish? What's a bad fish? Or a fish that we don't want to keep? Real world examples of this are kind of well-defined people within the business. They need to have a solid understanding of the knowledge problem and the stakeholders who may be involved. If we're tracking projects, for example, ideally it'd be someone within the project management office who would be assigned to this role. They would know which projects should be visible and which ones should not be, or which ones should be retired. They would know that project managers and the projects that they're associated with, so that way they could kind of connect the knowledge to the project manager. Responsibilities here are very much to view the artificial intelligence suggested topics, review topics and confirm they're valid, remove topics if they don't want them to be visible, and additionally, a knowledge manager can edit existing topics or create new ones if there hasn't been an AI picked that one up yet. Next, we have topic contributors. This is a big one. Contributors not only have topic viewer permissions, but can also edit existing topics or create new topics. These are very much your frontline people who really understand the knowledge problem, or who have the the brains, right, and the expertise to know when they can add information to a piece of knowledge. They have an important role in manually curating the information as it comes up and they can find it. A topic contributor also can create and publish new topics. If your organization decides to allow all users to be topic contributors, this will help them really feel empowered. So this is the people who are answering phone calls, right? Solving problems. They can contribute and author their knowledge to get the most value from Viva Topics. You can still limit certain topics for select groups, so you can still audience target, or I should say like security trim, so not everybody can see everything. But this really helps in making sure that everybody's involved. Some real world examples of who a topic contributor might be, as I talked about, these are your frontline subject matter experts, people like claims processors, customer service agents, and technology help desk analysts, just to name a few. They curate the information to make sure that it's correct. They identify subject matter experts, so like their peers who also might be able to contribute to this piece of knowledge, and they can also identify topics that haven't been identified yet. So Viva Topics might go out and find a whole bunch of stuff, but if we have something that's missing, they're going to know that something's missing, and then they can start to surface it and get that piece of knowledge out there for the rest of the organization. And then last but not least, we have the topic viewer. These are the people who are actually consuming the knowledge, right? They can view topics highlighted in their SharePoint Modern sites, Microsoft Search, and in the Topic Center, with more locations coming soon, and I'll talk more about that later because this is a really big one. Responsibilities are using Viva Topics knowledge to help them get their work done, and then also really big is this is to provide feedback how useful a topic is to them. So then how do we work towards a proof of concept, right? So after we've kind of planned and everything, now we've actually got to configure everything. So this is the big one, and I saw some comments coming up on it. Like, what do you want to do, a trial versus buying, right? So this is the big first fork in the road that every organization kind of faces, right? Limited time trials may not provide enough time to evaluate everything because trials can only be implemented once per tenant. So once a trial is done, it can't be reinitiated within a tenant. If you think about how you're going to run your proof of concept, how you're going to plan things, right? Like making sure that everything is up and in place and you have everybody set up and ready to go to kind of run this trial could be problematic within that time period that Microsoft allows. And it may be different depending on region. Planning and execution will have more risks because it is a limited time. And then proof of concepts may take a lower priority based on our everyday work, right? Like we may go out to set up this trial, right? And say it gives us 30 days as an example, right? And we set everything up and then all of a sudden, as we know, the world explodes. We have a whole bunch of stuff to do and this trial is no longer a priority for us. Then your trial expires and then it's like, now I have to buy a license anyways, right? But when it comes to buying, right, time is no longer a constraint, right? You can take the time to learn and prototype for potential business problems and sponsors, right? Licensing for projects or proof of concepts can expand or contract depending on the phase that you're in. This means like when we're starting, right, you might only want to buy 2, 3, 4 licenses, right? And at $4 a pop, right, that's not really that expensive. But as we expand our proof of concept or our like pilot, we can buy more licenses, and then when it's done, we can reduce those licenses. So that way it's not super expensive and we don't have to commit for a longer period of time. This is why we always recommend, and everybody that we help work through with the proof of concept, we recommend that they buy licenses. We see a lot of the people that we work with have burned through their trials anyway. So this is where we've kind of come, because a technology group like IT will typically turn it on, look at it a little bit, and then forget about it, right? So their trials are typically burnt. So that's why we always recommend just go right to the buy model, right? You keep one person licensed. This keeps all of the information stored in your tenant, and everything will just keep running along if you ever decide to use it. Then the next step is for the configuring is actually setting up the topic center. So this is where everything lives, right? This is the heart of Viva Topics. It's important to note at this moment in time, you can only have one topic center. So the big reason we bring that up is because when it gets to running something like this, we've seen a couple of organizations that have tried to run multiple pilots or multiple proof of concepts with different areas within the business. It might get a little confusing and a little hard to manage if you have multiple proofs of concepts or trials going on at the same time. We always kind of like to focus on one facet of a business when supporting them. It's also important to note, this is the question we always get asked the most, all of the permissions within Viva Topics still respects everything around the SharePoint permissioning model. So you will only see content that you have access to. So for example, I'm going to use Mike on the screen because he's got his camera on, right? So if he has access to a bunch of content that I don't, but we both have access to the same topic, I'm only going to see content and files that I have access to, and Mike's only going to see content and files that he has access to. So everything is still respected when we go through the whole permissioning model. So this is where we come back to buying, right? And making sure that we go through this. I think I inserted this slide by accident here. Why did I come back to this? Anyway, let's keep moving forward. Or did I go back? Okay, so then the next thing is for Viva Topics to go through, we actually have to identify where our content lives. So for Viva Topics, right, to scan content, it actually has to live in SharePoint, right? This is the big thing where we're kind of at right now. We're getting ready to kind of have it be able to connect it to other third-party services through the Microsoft Search portal and through the third-party connectors. We're not there yet. But this is where the rubber really starts to hit the road, because in the ideal scenario, right, and we want to ensure that our targeted knowledge already has a home within SharePoint Online, so we don't have to migrate it. But we have seen organizations, when they do have to run their proof of concept or their pilot, they actually have to migrate a set of content into SharePoint Online. If you have to do this, right, and one of the big things that you guys may or may not be aware of is that for Viva Topics to be run, Microsoft recommends that you have at least 10,000 pieces of content to be able to evaluate if the AI is doing its job appropriately. So the thing is, it's not a huge migration job, but having someone find the content, migrate it into SharePoint Online, make sure it's organized correctly, you can see how this obviously would expand the scope of what we're trying to do with a trial or a proof of concept. That's why we kind of always want to land on making sure that hopefully our targeted business scenario has their content in SharePoint Online already. And then how do we work? So this is where we kind of move into phase 3, which is implement and measure, right? As I kind of drill into this, right? This is where we actually drop the net and let Viva Topics start to do its work. So if we look at how we're going to do this, right, we want to get this to work and make sure that everybody can actually use this and we got the right fish and everybody's happy. So before anything goes out to employees, right, you know, the knowledge managers are going to need to curate the initial set of topics, right? So once Microsoft scans the content, they're going to have to go through this, keep the fish they want, throw away the ones they don't, right? This includes selecting, updating, and publishing the actual topics. We also want to hide the topics that we don't need. And to ensure this goes well, knowledge managers should already have a good idea of what type of topics to expect, you know, where this content lives already, what permissions people will need to access the content, and then who the subject matters are, the actual people that we want to make sure that we're validating this content is accurate. Then we go, and then we can kind of rip and get going. We can kind of make sure that we're go out and moving, right? So we want to communicate what Viva Topics is, right, to the people who are going to be using it, why we're performing this proof of concept, how long it's actually going to last for, what are we expecting of our employees? So the thing is, the people who are looking at the knowledge, tell them what we want. We want to get feedback. We want to make sure they're using it. We want them to explore, right? We want to make sure that we're providing them training resources so they know exactly what's expected of them. And then how we're going to be supporting them. And then also, what are the different feedback loops we have in place so that way we can collect all of the information from our users. Another good thing that we've seen a lot of is we have this term we use called office hours, where, you know, on a weekly basis, we kind of just get together on a Teams call and have everybody, you know, really kind of, you know, on the call talking about what's going on and answering different questions. We find that's really useful for when we're running proof of concepts like this, not just for Viva Topics, but everything that we kind of do and support. So I'm putting out here, and again, I just want to kind of say, I know I have this as like a 4-week proof of concept and trial, and some people may already be rolling their eyes and thinking, oh my God, this guy's nuts. We'll never get this done in 4 weeks. We've done a couple with 4 weeks because people have had very tight timelines and they wanted to make a decision on a knowledge management product. So that's why we've done this. Of course, if you have a little more time to kind of spread things out and give people more flexibility, right, that is always better. But we have made this work within a 4-week time period, right? And so within the first week, right, we always want to make sure that when we get off and running, we're explaining the goals of the project. This is to all stakeholders, right? So everybody, not just the knowledge administrators, not just the people at the top, but everybody in the food chain. Oh, I guess another fishing analogy there, right? The business problem that we're actually trying to solve, and then explaining the roles, responsibilities, and expectations of everybody that's involved in the project. When we have a great level set with everybody right at the start, we find that we get the most success with our proof of concepts. Then as we get into the second week, this is where we start to circulate training resources. So how the system works, how to curate, edit, and publish topics, right? And then how to use topics and provide feedback. So nobody's really using the tool yet. We're getting the training resources out. We're getting people to start curating, so the knowledge admins. But for the vast majority of the people who are involved, right, this is where we start to show them little videos, documentation on how they're actually going to use it. Then as we get into the third week, right, and this stuff can fluctuate a little bit, like this can start to happen in the second week for sure, we're curating, editing, and publishing topics, right? We're starting to use the actual topic center to help visualize all of the information that we want people to consume. And then we're updating the SharePoint pages using the topic functionality, so that way we can start to highlight these topic cards when they're shown within the actual SharePoint pages. And then as we get into the last and final part, we're continuing to curate topic. We're continuing to use topics, right? But we're starting to open the feedback loop. So we're having those office hours. We're having people submit feedback through the topics cards that are being sorted out. And then we also want to start to distribute surveys to everybody and get everybody to fill out their surveys to get the information back to us. So then we always want to make sure that we have these different types of measures of success to evaluate how our proof of concept went, right? We wanted to set those goals at the beginning. So then hopefully at the end, we've got the information to determine whether we've hit that goal or whether we haven't, right? And that's both quantitative and qualitative data that we need to collect from everybody involved with the project. Right. And so, again, some of the big questions that we should be able to answer once our proof of concept is complete, right, is were employees using the topics to find the information they need, right? Like, did they actually find this useful, right? Were employees helping identify and create more topics for their peers? So were they actually creating more knowledge and updating the knowledge that's being surfaced to them? Right? Could employees access the information that they need? This is the big one for us people who support technology. It's great that topics are created, but if the files aren't being surfaced because the permissions aren't right in SharePoint and we don't have access to the actual knowledge, that's a big problem. So this is a big one here, right? Was AI, right, finding the information and could serve the information up to your employees? So was it actually finding the right types of topics? Did we set up the right crawling locations? Was it finding all of the information that you need? This is a big one that a lot of people say. So like, again, going into Viva Topics, a lot of people have the expectation that this Microsoft Day is like a magic wand and it's just going to surface all this stuff and it's going to be kumbaya. We're holding hands, smiling, drinking a Coke, right? And everything's working perfectly. As I said, you need humans to make sure that the stuff works right. Like, we're keeping the fish we want, we're throwing back the ones we don't. How much time is actually required by humans to make sure that we're sorting the fish properly, that we're getting the right information, right? Some organizations go in thinking this is too much work. It's not something that we can devote priorities to right now, just because of other things going on in the world, right? So this is something that you need to evaluate as you come out of your pilot or your proof of concept. Do we have enough people to make sure that this can keep running? Right. And then the last one and the big one, right, that, especially us at Habanero are very, very, very passionate about is how did our end users feel, right? What was the user experience for them? Do they feel satisfied as to where the product is now? Because the big thing that I always talk about, like, I love the vision where Microsoft is taking Microsoft Viva on all of its 4 pillars, especially Viva Topics. But right now, it's at the very early stages of the platform. Like, we can't connect into third-party resources, right? I showed the demo about how Viva Topics can be surfaced in Microsoft Teams. We're not there yet, right? So the thing is, sending people to a topic center or having this stuff highlighted in SharePoint pages, does that provide enough of a user experience bump where people are going to be satisfied, or do we need the platform to mature more before we implement it? These are all big questions that we want to be able to answer coming out of our proof of concept. So then, to summarize, as I'm kind of wrapping up here today, and I've been chewing your ear off here from the Great White North, one, just like I talked about, you still need a human, right? Topics is a great and powerful tool, and I think where Microsoft is taking this is going to be amazing, and I really do think that it's fundamentally going to change the way that we work, right? But like the fishing analogy, right? It catches everything. You need a human to kind of filter that, make sure what you keep and what goes back into the water. The second thing is, evaluating the worth of topics, right? Because as I said, it very much is in the earliest stages of this. Is this worth a cup of coffee per person in an organization, right? Like, I don't know what a cup of coffee costs in Boston, right? But up here in Canada, where our dollar is magnified compared to yours, right? A cup of coffee is around, $4 a month, right? Like somebody in the chat mentioned, right? We know based on studies provided by Microsoft and other studies that, employees spend about 10 to 20% of their day just looking for and recreating information, right? Like, that's an hour every day, right? Like 5 hours a week, right? Like, think about how much somebody gets paid. Is Viva Topics worth $4 to kind of make them more productive? That's what I think an organization has to ask. Is that investment worth it? I think if you can get use out of this and find it useful at its current stage, we absolutely think it's worth that. Again, of course, we talked about how Viva Topics is worth $4 a month. Microsoft does have a bundle that provides more value if you are going to leverage things like learning, connections, and oh my God, I'm blanking on the fourth one. There's connections, top insights. That's the other one that provides, so there's the 4. I kind of blanked on that one, where you kind of save a little bit more money. That's a whole other kettle of fish. Oh my God. Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. So as I go through this, I'll move to the last one here. And then lastly, again, this is just the beginning, right? This is the first version of the product. I was lucky enough when I kind of gave this presentation at Knowledge World in November, which was in Virginia. I was with Sue Hanley, who all of you probably know, who are kind of following anybody in the SharePoint sphere. She's like one of the rock stars around. Also, Mark Cashman from Microsoft, who's like head of product. He actually showed us a lot of the functionality that's going on behind the scenes, and is hoping to, like, some of it I'm literally waiting for functionality to drop at any time. We all know how Microsoft deals with their updates and when they come out, and I know some of the things should have been dropped already, like the search connectors right into their already identified connectors. But this is very much the start of the product, and it's only going to get better. Like, I know the big third-party connectors are supposed to drop at any time, which are going to provide a lot more value to people that we support. The next thing, the first, I believe, this is an NDA type stuff, but the first topics integration that we're going to see is into Outlook for the web. So the thing is, whenever topics are surfaced and automatically highlighted in emails, this is where we're really going to start to see the first benefits of these other integrations within the Microsoft ecosystem, with Teams coming in the second half of this year. So that's, again, it's still coming and it's still evolving, right? But I think that this is going to be a great thing. But again, it's just starting. So then, as I kind of wrap up, I just want to say thanks to Mike and Dimitri for allowing me to kind of join you guys virtually. If you want to think about how you could actually do this, or want to chat or anything like that, you can reach me at the email listed below. If you want a copy of this deck or anything like that, I'd be happy to give it to you, or reach out and connect on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions about this or anything else Microsoft 365, let me know. I've been to a few of the Boston user sessions as COVID hit, right? Trying to figure out how I can understand more about Microsoft 365. So even though I talked today, you'll probably see me here again in the future, as long as you guys keep staying remote for the time being. And yeah, thank you very much. And let me know if you guys have any questions. And that is it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. That was awesome.
Thanks for having me. Does anybody,
I
guys?
signed up my tenant for a trial of this as you were talking about it. So
But did you allocate resources, Mike?
Ha!
I did not allocate any resources. No.
It
All
is
right.
awesome. It is a great tool, and we're starting to see a lot of momentum with our clients trying to figure this out. Not a lot of organizations or partners that we've worked with have implemented it yet. A lot are really in the exploratory phase. So this is why we really thought it was timely to talk about proof of concepts and pilots, because once you talk about licensing, and I know Microsoft likes to drive this hard, like let's get people signed up, let's get the licenses, let's get the CAL, so that way we're starting to kind of generate revenue, right? But when we're thinking about organizations with hundreds, thousands of users, it can be a significant investment, right? So that's why we really kind of recommend, keeping it small, scaling it up, and then scaling it down until you understand the real value that it can bring to an organization, and if you think the platform's ready for it yet.
Sounds great. So we do have a few slides to close out here. So for upcoming community events, there's a variety of ongoing calls. Adaptive Cards, as Mike was showing us earlier today, has a call that happens every second Thursday of each month. There's a variety of other calls within the community talking about more from a development perspective, more from an identity perspective, or other areas as well. If you're interested in any of these, please do check it out. And we have a URL here at the bottom, pnp.github.io, that has these and some additional community calls that you're able to partake in. There is also a Power BI Summit coming up in a few weeks from now. It is going to be an online conference. So if you are interested in the world of Power BI and what's yet to come, definitely check that out as well. Are we missing any other community events that anyone would like to share? All right, we'll keep moving forward. There's some additional recurring community resources on this slide as well. I'd like to give a quick shout out to our neighboring user groups. We have the Rhode Island user group. Down south, we have the Hartford user group. Out west, we have the Granite State up north. And then we have a few other ones around Azure and Power BI that are all over the place. I think most of these have also gone virtual with COVID. So that being said, we could take a few minutes now. If anyone has any kind of pressing questions or anything that's really got you banging your head against the wall related to Office 365, or if there's a tip where you were banging your head and you found a way around that, if anyone would like to share, please feel free to take yourselves off mute.
One thing, if I could add to what Mike said about Viva Topics, Microsoft has come out with some very good adoption resources, full of rich scenarios, good communication templates. Like, I think several of us have been Microsoft partners long enough to be skeptical about big programmatic offerings from Microsoft, but I really feel like they've gotten it right with this package of them that I've seen so far.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Is that available on the adoption.microsoft.com site?
Yeah, I believe you can get them there. I'll take a quick look and paste the URL in.
Awesome. Thank you.
I noticed on some of the Microsoft YouTube channels that they were specifically doing a new push for adoption methodologies and the like. So I think they have added a bunch of new content, even outside of the Viva product line.
Cool. So we'll move forward. So for next month, we have Chris Bortlick presenting an architect's view of SharePoint syntax plus Viva Topics better together. So be sure to check out our website to register for the session once we post it in the next few days. And of course, keep an eye out for our newsletter where we'll be advertising this leading up to the session. Just want to have one more thanks to our platinum sponsor, Turn Digital. as well as all of our past sponsors that have really enabled this user group, and as well as the SharePoint user group, to be a functioning thing and running for quite a few years. I know our user group here has been about 7 years, but the Boston SharePoint user group merged into us a few years before that. Sorry, a few years ago, and then they've been running for at least a decade, if not longer. So definitely thanks to all the local companies and broader companies that have made that happen.